A warning before you listen.
What you are about to hear is not meant for children, nor for the faint of heart. This is an unfiltered retelling of ancient myths, told as they were born, raw, violent, unsoftened. Expect scenes of brutality, curses that linger, betrayals that reshape fate, and a hunger for power that shows no mercy. These myths were never meant to lull children to sleep. They were forged in blood, shadow, and fire. So ask yourself, are you ready to hear them as they were first told? Sources and references can be found in the episode description.
In this immersive audio saga, we tell the story, The Uprising, from the cave to the edge of war. Prologue. From the shadows of the cave to the thunder in the sky, the dawn of sacred fury. In the beginning, the sky did not witness. It towered. It screamed without sound, birthed without asking the name of what emerged. And deep below, where the cave held nothing but the echo of something slaughtered, he was there. Not as a child awaiting a mother's warmth, but as a curse, ripening, pulsing, waiting, silent, starving, not dreaming of milk, but of blood. There was no sun, no voice of a mother, no scent but rot. In that suffocating dark, innocence was not lost, it was buried, and time itself coiled around his body like a rope, not meant to hang him, but to teach him. Zeus? No one ever whispered that name. No one taught him words. He carved his own language from the friction of lightning grinding through the dark. He did not leave the cave. He tore himself from it, the way a blade is pulled from raw flesh. He didn't walk the mountain. He made it move beneath the weight of his will. He knew. Light isn't granted. It's taken. The stones beneath his feet whispered, "You are no one's son. You are regret, walking." The wind laughed. "If you are a god, prove it, not by prayer, but by ruin." He clenched his fist and answered, "I don't ask for worship. I ask that the universe tremble when I open my eyes." And from that moment on, life was never innocent again. Every tree shivered, every mountain bowed, and every fire buried in the earth choked itself awake, longing for him. Zeus emerged, not to reign, but to avenge, not to build, but to shatter what fear had built. This is not a tale of a god's birth, but of a storm's uprising, a thunderbolt delayed too long, a being not born to be loved, but to be remembered. The hand that would rewrite all things, not with ink, but with blood. Let heaven beware, and the underworld prepare, for what comes next isn't revenge alone, but a new education in how the world should kneel.
In this epic, we tell the saga of lightning when it chose not to shine, but to rule. Of a boy who never suckled, yet made mountains tremble when he walked. Of brothers spat from tyranny's throat, not to be forgiven, but to fight. From the cave's curse to the weight of a throne, from sacred vomit to the bending of creation. This is not the story of Zeus. This is the story of the moment the gods themselves chose to kneel, not to blood, but to the one who knew how to spill it. Chapter 1. From the Epic, The Uprising, from the cave to the edge of war. An unforgiven ascent when lightning put the mountain on trial. This is not a beginning, it's a tremor, a quake that started beneath the feet of a god whose very name time was too afraid to speak. Zeus did not emerge from a cave, he came from silence itself,
from the belly of absence, from stone that conspired to erase his name before it was ever uttered. He walked, no, he pressed forward. Every rock beneath him moaned, not from the weight of his step, but from the realization that the ground had never before been asked to kneel to something that did not ask for kneeling. Every nerve in his body remembered something it had never lived, and every breath he took was another reason to go to war. The air didn't greet him, it struck him, but he did not bend. The wind didn't sing, it screamed, "Who are you to climb this mountain? Who are you to pry open the mouth of the sky? Who are you, son of no mother, child of no father?" And he replied, not with his lips, but with his skin, his bones, his very presence, "I am the one who will make the sky descend, not to rain, but to bow."
Sweat did not drip from his body. It bled. His frame wasn't that of a youth, nor that of a god. He moved like a boulder learning how to walk. His muscles didn't just shift, they threatened. Every footprint he left behind made the soil shed its own skin, as if whispering, "This is not a creature, this is a curse on legs." As he climbed, memories he never lived flashed before his eyes. Faces he didn't recognize, but hated. He heard laughter fossilized in the bones of the sky, laughter that sounded like Cronus, still drunk on betrayal. And yet, he did not stop. Then came the rain, not from above, but from within. It poured from his chest, from beneath his skin, from the storm of his heart. The tempest wasn't sent to drown him. It came to submit. Lightning circled him, not to strike, but to plead, as if begging to return to the one who birthed it. He reached the rock. It looked nothing like a throne. It looked like an execution site. Still, he did not flinch. He raised his gaze to the sky. He asked for nothing, but his voice broke loose, not from his mouth, but from his bones, his flesh, his core. "Hear me, O sky. I am no longer anyone's son. No mother calls for me. No womb remembers me. But I stand here, not to beg, but to seize. If you are queen of gods, then kneel tonight. If you are my mother, then drink the blood of this mountain that deceived me, because I am here to guide the thunder to those who deserve it." And in the depths below, the roots began to tremble. In the air, lightning crackled like a breath caught between fear and awe. And in the heart of the mountain, a sound leaked out, a true sound, the first in centuries. It said, "Lightning has risen, and it will never return to darkness." With that ascent, it wasn't just the heavens that opened, the laws shattered, and a leader was born, not from a bloodline, not from a prayer, but from a wound that roared to the world. "I will free my brothers, or tear the throat of fate apart with my own teeth." The chapter ends here, but the lightning is still rising. Chapter 2. From the Epic. The uprising from the cave to the edge of war, the unforgiving earth, when Gaia spoke the name of deceit. The summit was cloaked in silence, not the kind that soothes, but the kind that lingers like the breath of a crime left unpunished. Zeus stood alone, mountains beneath him, clouds above, but none of them stood over him anymore. His skin was torn by the wind, his eyes split open from the inside, ripped by a thought that would not forgive, that the sky which birthed him was complicit, and the earth that carried tyrants had never said sorry. Then the mountain trembled, not from a storm descending, but from her rising. Gaia, not a goddess, but the scent of beginnings, the scent before the sin and after the purity. She didn't walk out of the stone, she unfolded. Her body wasn't feminine,
It was continental, scarred terrain, laced with rivers of curses and cliffs carved by the jaws of kings who stole thrones with their fists. Zeus paused. He didn't kneel. He didn't flinch. But he listened. She spoke, in a voice that had forgotten what it meant to sound like a woman. "You've broken your silence. Now where will you plant your scream? Upon the thrones, or inside the mouths of your brothers who've never seen the light?" He answered, like spitting fire from his ribs. "I want to tear open the belly of tyranny. I'm not seeking justice. I'm looking for a place to bury my vengeance." She laughed, but her laugh wasn't laughter. It was a wound. "Ah," she said, "that's how children of hatred speak, not children of prophecy." She drew near, not in steps, but in fractures beneath his feet. "Do you know who I am?" she hissed. "I armed your father with the sickle of crime. I spilled the first divine blood. I taught time that real change begins with severance." Then she spat near his foot, and her voice rose, echoing into bone. "I'm not a rock in the mountain. I am the mountain. I'm not a shadow beneath your steps. I am the earth. I am Gaia. I was never born, and I do not die. I am the mother of everything. Your mother, your father's mother, the mother of the hand that forged the sickle, and the mother of the one it cut. I saw it all, not because I was there, but because I was there. I watched the sky get raped. I watched kings get slaughtered. I watched justice get strangled in a womb. And you're just a spark that slipped through an ancient crack in my chest, so do not raise your voice at me, because I am the scream that lived in this cosmos before sound was ever invented." She glared at him. "I see you walking as if you were fed at the breast. But truth, no one nursed you, no one raised you. You were never born. You were forged in silence from stone that shattered the moment it heard your name." Zeus stepped closer. "Did you come to frighten me?" he asked. "Or are you here to beg forgiveness?" Her laughter this time cut deeper. It didn't echo, it opened wounds. "I beg for nothing," she said, "but I warn you. Don't think rage is enough. Rage ignites, but it does not dethrone. Only deceit can shatter crowns." She paused, then lifted a finger, pointed to another mountain, the one where clouds swam but never cracked. "There," she said, "there waits a woman, not a whore, not a mother, something else. Her name is Metis." Metis wasn't born for love. She was carved to dismantle tyrants. Zeus turned his gaze toward the mountain. Gaia continued, "If you wish to free your brothers, go to her. She does not offer mercy, but she remembers the names of the crushed. Metis knows how to dissolve kingdoms in a single cup and how to hang crimes inside tyrants' mouths like wine. She is the scar that never heals, the only one who will make sure you never become what came before you." Zeus stared into Gaia's eyes. "And if she betrays me?" he asked. "Then you never deserve to lead the swallowed," she said. Then she vanished. The mountain split and swallowed her whole. Zeus remained standing, not because the moment called for strength, but because the world no longer deserved to be carried by anything less than lightning that chose not to illuminate, but to burn. And from that moment on, the war was no longer about power. It became a war of poison. And Zeus walked, not toward battle, but toward deception. The chapter ends here, but the earth hasn't gone silent yet. Chapter 3. From the Epic, the Uprising, from the cave to the edge of war. When lightning meets guile, the birth of sacred poison. There was nothing on that mountain waiting, except a mind quietly preparing the end of the world. Zeus had arrived. His steps cracked the stone like they carried a judgment not yet declared. Behind him, the sky didn't weep, it waited. And ahead of him, she sat, Metis. Not standing like a goddess flaunting her pride, but seated at the edge of a chasm, watching a fissure in the earth, as if waiting for it to whisper a secret never meant to be spoken. There was silence in her presence. Not the kind that submits, but the kind born from cunning turned into faith. Her body, slender, but unsettling, not made to be touched, but to be understood. Her hair flowed long and wavy, draped over her shoulders like pages from an unread mind. And her eyes, they didn't ask, they watched, each blink enough to topple a kingdom. She wasn't beautiful the way lovers dream. She captivated the way an idea does when it threatens everything you believe. Anyone who saw her knew they weren't ready to meet a woman like this. Zeus approached. He didn't speak. But he wasn't silent. He looked at her, like a man who knew she knew too much. She didn't rise. She only lifted her head, and with a voice that felt like sacred profanity, she asked, "So, it's you, son of the wind that never birthed, the thunder no one ever raised?" He answered, voice equally untamed, "And you, the mind that never bowed to any body." She smirked, turned her face with cool disdain like she was pulling her presence out of the very air. "The body is taken," she said, "but the mind? It is only violated when it goes quiet. And I don't go quiet." They walked together, circling dead soil. Metis spoke slowly, like casting an endless spell of seduction. "You want to bring Cronus down? You think you're the first? Others came before you, with swords, with screams, and they fell, swallowed by their own noise." Zeus stepped in, close enough to steal her breath. "I don't scream," he said. "I give birth to lightning." She answered, "Lightning burns, but poison? Poison makes a king vomit himself out. It strengthens him through his own death." Metis sat on the ground, not like a priestess, like a judge. From beneath her robe she pulled a black vial, unlike anything. She placed it before them. This isn't poison. It's the memory of unborn bodies, the screams of those swallowed before they could even cry. This doesn't kill, it unlocks. So tell me, do you dare to fight, not with the sword, but with vomit?" Zeus turned his back as if her words stung. "I came for battle," he said, "not a kitchen recipe." She rose, spat her voice like a curse. "You don't understand. Real war leaves no blood on the earth, only wounds in memory. A blade can be forgiven. Humiliation? Never. You want a sword to rip Cronus open and drag out what's inside? And if your brother's guts spill with the blood, if you tear them apart with him, I'm not giving you poison to kill him. I'm giving you a chance to save them. Your brothers are still alive, suffering inside him every moment. If you kill him now, their names die too. But if you make him spit them out, only then can you take up your sword, not to rescue, but to end everything. So tell me, Zeus, did you come to avenge or to reclaim?" Zeus stepped back, like a rib guarding his heart had suddenly shattered. He clutched his chest, not from pain, but because he could feel them screaming inside him. He closed his eyes and saw the womb where childhood had been devoured. He heard the voiceless cries, "Hestia, Demeter, Hera." Then the silent shadows, Hades, Poseidon, not born but vomited out by fate. He opened his eyes slowly. "Did you make this? From air?" he asked. Metis answered, her voice dripping with maternal damnation. I made it from the ashes of 3 gods, who starved to death screaming beneath the throne. From the blood of an eagle that stabbed its own heart, so it wouldn't sing for tyrants. I whispered to it in the night, mix with milk from a mother who never nursed, whose breast rotted from guilt. And with a silence unheard, a curse from a forgotten woman left at the altar. Then I added something that resembles nothing, the rage of a mother who never gave birth, the body meant to be held, not devoured, a scream that history never wrote down.
This is not poison. This is a shameful history, compressed into a single drop. And then she said, slowly, as if pronouncing the final vow of a royal death rite, if you truly wish to bring them back, let me slip this drop into his cup. Then watch, as he vomits his throne piece by piece until he spits you out, not as a son, but as a wound. Zeus stepped close, touched the vial with his fingertips. And if he drinks it and doesn't fall, she answered, then you were never worthy to carry the lightning. That night, no smoke rose, no star fell, but the plan of poison was born. And for the first time, Zeus knew the coming war would not be won by fire, but by the drink.
Chapter 4. From the Epic, the Uprising, from the cave to the edge of war. When the wind slapped the womb, the first tremble after silence. The night was heavy, as if something ancient had returned to press its weight upon the chest of the world. No lightning in the sky, no cries echoing through the mountains. Only a silence, old, suffocating, held like a breath just before a prophecy is spoken. And none heard it, except her, Rhea. The woman who had exiled herself from myth, shrunk into a stone, inhabited only by the remnants of a dried breast and a womb that gasped in its sleep like it had forgotten something living inside. The wind arrived. It did not knock, it did not ask, it did not seek permission. It stormed into her solitude as if to declare, what you hid is no longer hidden. What you buried now stands. Rhea sat at the edge, not of a mountain, but of herself, of a body love had abandoned and fear had remembered. She held the torn edge of her robe, breathing in a scent that didn't belong to any time. She looked at the sky, not with a question, but with eyes that trembled. She whispered, has he returned? And the wind slapped her, not with air, with memory, as if answers weren't meant to be spoken, but inflicted.
She had thought motherhood ended with birth, but the wind awakened a scream within her, one that had waited too long, climbing up through her fingernails. She closed her eyes and saw him. No face, no name, only footsteps. Each step an accusation, each approach a reckoning. She asked herself, do I run? Do I welcome him as an excuse, or kneel as a sin? What does the sun I never saw say to me? Does he still know me? Does my heart still carry his shape? But the wind didn't wait for her questions. It scattered everything. The fire, the bones, the sour milk crusted on stone. Then it roared through her, stop regretting. If your son has returned, he has not come to embrace you. He has come to judge you. Rhea stood, as if the ground itself began to speak beneath her feet. She remembered a rock, one she had sat on centuries ago, not for rest, but as a monument, to the burden, to the fear that had grown in her womb instead of children,
to the first time she cried before she even knew how to name pain. She walked to the lake, still water, untouched since the day she betrayed the lightning. She looked in and didn't see her face. She saw everyone who came from her and vanished. She saw Demeter planting sorrow instead of wheat, and Hestia blowing into a flame that refused to burn, and Hera weeping, then smiling, as if cruelty had been born from a single tear. She saw Hades, no face, just a shadow nesting in fear. She saw Poseidon, striking the water as if cursing the womb that didn't save him. And finally, she saw something indescribable, lightning without features, a name never spoken, yet feared. She saw Zeus. Had he truly returned, or had Gaia sent the wind to awaken her guilt? Or had the war begun, and lightning no longer played in caves? Rhea murmured to herself, "I didn't betray him, I just wasn't ready." And the wind answered her, this time from inside. Readiness is not something you request. Readiness is opening your mouth the moment the scream is born. She lifted her head, her lips trembled. She said, "If he has returned, I will tell him the truth, and I will stand naked before his name, just as I once stood naked before his father's fear." The skies weren't grateful, the mountains weren't scornful, but everything in nature began to move the wrong way. Because when Gaia sends the wind, it does not carry news, it carries judgment. The chapter ends, but Rhea does not.
Chapter 5. From the Epic. The uprising from the cave to the edge of war, the drop that turns time, when poison was forged from the flesh of silence. The cavern wasn't a shelter, nor a sanctuary. It was an old wound carved into the ribs of the mountain, still bleeding curses. Its air couldn't be breathed, only chewed through clenched teeth. Its darkness wasn't a lack of light. It was an open mouth, waiting for you to feed it your first thought of betrayal. Metis stood there. She didn't look like a sorceress or a healer. She looked like a murder author, composing the final chapter with fingers that had never trembled. In the corner, Zeus said nothing. He didn't interrupt. His body was tense, alive with warning. But his eyes were wide open, letting her carve her story into his skin. Metis spoke. Her voice dripped words, as if each one had to hurt before it could be understood. "Everyone who's ever tried to bring down tyranny," she said, "came wielding a sword and was buried in a grave. But me, I carry a vial. It opens the bellies of kings without spilling a single drop of blood."
She reached into a stone basin and scooped a handful of ash. It had no scent, no color.
"Do you know what this is?" she said. "These are the remains of children who never got names, infants who died staring at their father's mouth, waiting for it not to close over them." She poured the ash into the bowl. Then came a strand of hair, colorless, not black, not white, forgotten by time itself. "This," she whispered, "belongs to a mother who cut off her own dream with her own hand. She bled in the night and didn't scream, because screaming back then was betrayal." She laid the hair gently in the bowl. Then she picked up a smooth rock and cracked it open. From its belly, a thick fluid spilled out, neither water nor oil. It moved like guilt simmered slowly into flesh. Metis's eyes flared. "This is the saliva of truth," she said, "when it refuses to be swallowed. It's the core of the poison. It doesn't kill, it sickens. It doesn't silence, it forces the rapist to speak." Then she stirred, not with a spoon, but with her middle finger. She plunged it deep into the brew, like she was signing a personal death pact. Then said, "You are lightning, Zeus, strong, but mute. This drink, it's your first tongue." Second, Zeus approached.
The mixture boiled without fire. It shivered without heat. Something inside it wanted to be born. He whispered, "Will this be enough? Will it shatter the cups? Will it force out the swallowed?" She answered, "Blood builds graves, but this drop, this opens the executioner's mouth and forces him to give birth to his victims through his throat." She then dipped her whole hand into the bowl and pulled it out. One drop clung to the tip of her fingernail. She raised it close to his eyes. "This," she said, "is not to be drunk. It is to be endured, because it doesn't kill the king. It humiliates his name. It splits his throne from within, like a child tearing its mother's womb, refusing to be aborted." Zeus didn't smile, but his forehead burned. The brew had already begun to ignite something under his skin. He said, "Make the rest. I will carry it to him." Her voice sharpened, now clearer, now colder. "Don't offer him victory. Offer him vomit. Don't slay him. Make him spit himself out before those he once deceived." And from a distant corner of the cavern, the wind stirred, as if witnessing the first recipe for liberation that required no blood. The chapter ended, but the drop was still fermenting in the pot, brewing an explosion with no sound, only a scent, heavy on the breath of kings. Chapter 6. From the Epic, the Uprising. From the cave to the edge of war. The sun who grew, the meeting between Rhea and Zeus. The mountain wasn't ready, nor was the earth prepared to echo the scream that had been trapped inside a heart for centuries. Even the air held its breath, as if time itself whispered, "Not now. This moment is sacred." Zeus was walking forward, not as a child returning to his mother, but as a force emerging from absence, with a blade of lightning in his hand and a question in his chest that refused to be spoken. Inside him, a quiet voice stirred, a voice without thunder, a voice that asked, timidly, "Will she recognize me?" And Rhea? She was waiting, but she didn't know who would come. Would it be her son, or a phantom shaped by lightning and distance? Would he embrace her, or put her on trial? Would he call her mother, or say, "You're the one who left me"? Zeus reached her. He didn't speak. He simply stood. His body was shadow, his silence a verdict. Rhea looked at him the way the earth looks at the sun when it returns after too long. She stared at his features, and in them she saw Cronus, the same jaw, the same eyes that never showed mercy. But she also saw something else. She saw herself, the fear she carried when she handed him to the mountain, the regret stretching across his gaze, the fire she left inside him, now grown and burning. She raised her hand, then hesitated, and finally, in a voice she hadn't used in years, she whispered, "Is it you?" And Zeus answered, not as a boy, but as someone who had broken chains. "You're the one who hid me. Don't you recognize your own face?" His words weren't gentle, but they weren't cruel. They were the kind of words that cut only to let the healing begin. Rhea wept, not because she saw her son, but because, in him, she saw herself. She saw how time had changed. She said, "Every night I counted the seconds, so you wouldn't forget my voice." He replied, "I didn't forget, but I feared I might." He asked, "How did you know it was me?" She answered, "Because my heart gave birth to only one like you." He asked again, "Why didn't you come to find me?" She said,
because the wind reached you before I could. This wasn't a reunion. It was a reckoning. She wasn't a mother begging for forgiveness. And he wasn't a child seeking explanation. Both of them knew. What was lost would never return. But what could be built must begin with truth. Zeus touched her hand for the first time. His fingers were cold, but alive. And Rhea couldn't speak, but her eyes said everything. You are the last regret that gave birth to life. He smiled, not a warm smile, a sharp one, the kind that says, I am here, not to return, but to begin. Then he asked, Mother, will you stand with me? And Rhea looked at him, as if lightning had entered her eyes, and she said, I never left you. I only waited until you were grown enough to lead me. So this was no longer a son meeting his mother. It was a leader facing his regret, a rebel confronting his wound, a flame returning to the hand that first lit it. This was Zeus, not coming home, but coming for what was his. A storm, finally aware of who struck the first spark and who would feel the first thunder.
Chapter 7. From the Epic the Uprising, from the cave to the edge of war. The mother's plan, entering the palace through the gate of tyranny. They sat together on the edge of the night. Rhea, the mother who was never forgiven, and Zeus, the son who grew up in exile, knowing nothing of the world but rejection, and nothing of time but the claw marks tyranny leaves on the flesh of birth. The silence between them wasn't peace. It was embers, burning quietly without smoke, as if the earth was holding its breath before vomiting up those buried inside it. Then Zeus said, They're not dead. My siblings, they weren't killed. They were swallowed, trapped inside a hunger that never ends, inside Cronus. Rhea's eyes screamed before her mouth could. Tears welled and memory struck. Every child devoured by a womb that was never a mother, but a mouth. The screams of Hestia, Demeter, Hera, then shadows without voices, Hades and Poseidon, as if they had never been born, but were vomited by fate before their names could even be spoken. In a breath smaller than sound, she asked, Since when did you know? He answered, When Metis whispered the truth to me, that a throne doesn't just swallow innocence, it devours memory too.
Rhea gasped, not from shock, but as an oath. A shudder ran through her like a lightning strike through a dead tree. Time itself, for a moment, remembered that it was once a crime.
Zeus reached out his hand, not to seek comfort, but to demand something far more dangerous. I need to enter the palace, she asked. And what will you do there? He pulled out a small black flask. It wasn't glass, but something like dried serpent skin. Poison, he said, crafted by Metis. Just a single drop, and Cronus will unravel. Everything he swallowed will erupt from within. I want my siblings back. I don't want to kill them with him. Rhea looked at him, not as a mother sees her child, but as a woman sees salvation in the shape of someone she once called son. I will get you inside the palace, she said, but you won't be Zeus anymore. She paused, then added, You'll enter like a sickness, like air, unseen until it kills. You will be a servant. Not the kind who is noticed, but the kind whose silence ends kingdoms. They approached the eastern wall, where light dared not go, where no foot stepped, because that wall remembered betrayal.
She said, Dip your hand in this mud. Smear it over your face. Choose a face that disgusts the powerful, a face that makes kings laugh. Then kick. And he did. Covered his eyes, his mouth, his skin. He became a shadow, nameless, ageless, carrying only one thing inside him: a decision. As for Rhea, she wore a grey robe the color of forgotten graves. Her walk was a funeral, her voice was silence. But her face was a bomb that didn't need a fuse. They reached the palace gates. The guards stood, then bowed. She was the queen, and behind her a servant. But she wasn't the queen. She was betrayal, walking on two legs, knocking on the throne room with the face of a mother who had chosen to become the enemy. She entered, and the shadow followed. Zeus was behind her, but he was no longer Zeus. He was a thing without a name, walking without sound, carrying not just poison in his pocket, but a vow not written in ink, but in vomit. He entered the palace not as one who belonged, but as one who would end it. He vanished among the servants, a thread of darkness born for this very purpose. No one lifted their eyes to him, no one spoke his name, but he saw everything. He studied the walls, the throne, the sickle that hung like a memory of betrayal, and whispered to himself, "I'm not here to wait, I'm here to end it." And so Zeus entered the palace, not as a returning son, nor a reborn god, but as a disease. If you've made it this far, then you are truly a seeker of knowledge. Support this journey with a kind word, a simple like, or even a small subscription, for its impact is far greater than you think. Your voice is the one that keeps this saga alive. Chapter 8. From the Epic, the Uprising, from the cave to the edge of war. The unnamed face, when poison was poured into the chalice of the throne. The night had not ended, but something within it had. Silence, deep within the palace where candles flickered like withered old women singing at the funeral of a living king. Zeus stood among the servants, not as one of them, but as a wound waiting to open in the belly of time. No one knew him, no one looked at him, but he was watching everyone. At the center of the grand hall sat Cronus, wiping his mouth with a jeweled cloth, as if the blood of his children were nothing but fine lacquer, a luxury stain that would never wash away. He struck the floor with his staff, laughed, sipped wine as a conqueror might savor the coughs of his dying foes. And Zeus? He did not look up. He did not move like a god, but like a clever death, studying its prey before the first bite. The hall was loud with silent screams, laughter, footsteps, soldiers shifting, loyalty rotting beneath the feast table. But Zeus heard something else. He heard intestines, digesting names. He heard the echo of Hestia's voice, the pain of Demeter, the choking breath of Hera. He heard the sounds that had long lost their sound. He moved slowly, lifted the pitcher, opened its lid, dipped his finger into the wine, just as Metis had taught him. Then he drew out the flask. It wasn't large, but the world trapped inside it was screaming. A single drop touched the surface of the wine. No sound, but time itself began to tremble. He closed the lid, stirred the wine gently as if waking a sleeping ghost, then whispered, "Drink, you who swallowed us. This is no wine, it's memory, rising from your mouth one by one." He walked past the king, not bowing, but delivering fate. No one noticed him, but everything about him shimmered, not with light, but with intention. Then he stepped into a shadowed corner of the hall where sound did not reach, but he heard everything. He saw the chalice lifted, saw it touch those lips, saw the first sip, then the second. And in the moment the wine clung to the tyrant's throat, the walls shuddered, the air clenched, and the palace felt something rupture inside a belly that had known only imprisonment. Zeus did not smile. He did not cry. But he knew. The world changed. Right here, with one chalice, one drop, a throne began to vomit, and names long buried by tyranny began to return. Thus, the night ended, but the throne of Cronus began to retch.
Chapter 9. From the Epic, the Uprising. From the cave to the edge of war. The throne trembles when the king began to vomit himself. At first, nothing happened. He lifted the chalice and drank it, as he did every night. He swallowed the wine like one swallowing his own deserved glory. Even his smile didn't flinch. But the throne beneath him did. The palace walls exhaled, as if they had been holding their breath for 1,000 years. The flames in the sconces dimmed, not by any wind, but as if embarrassed by what they were about to witness. In the center of the hall sat Cronus, as he always had. Chest held high, belly tight like a burial shroud, but something small, began to stir inside him. Something unseen, but the body began to hear it. The first tremor was a subtle twitch between the thighs, climbing up the spine like a betrayal quietly filing charges against its king. Cronus laughed, a drunken laugh, the kind only a monarch knows, who ends his nights belching over the bones of those he devoured.
But tonight, the belch was silent, salty, hot. He placed the cup on the table, didn't know why it suddenly felt heavy. "This wine," he muttered, wiping his mouth, "tastes like dirt. Who changed the barrel?" The servants looked on in silence. Zeus stood in the back, unmoving, but ripening, like a quiet storm boiling in its own skin. Cronus reached for his gut. Something stirred. It wasn't food. It wasn't digestion. It was a prophecy, scraping the walls of his intestines from the inside. He roared suddenly. "Where is the cook? Did you poison me? Who put this rot in the wine?" But the rot wasn't in the drink. It was in his gut. He clutched his stomach, curled slightly forward, gasped not from pain, but from recognition. The throne grew cold beneath him. The silk cushion beneath him turned to ice. Then came the sweat, dripping from his brow, down his neck, sliding between his legs as if fear itself was being excreted through the skin. Cronus whispered, in a voice usually reserved for prisoners in chains, "What is this? Something moves inside me. It's not food. It's not pleasure. This feels like them."
He leaned over, and out of his mouth came something slick, colorless, but its scent was unmistakable. The scent of a womb that had buried the names of his children. One of the guards stepped forward cautiously. "Shall we call for help, my king? Shall we stop them?" But Cronus didn't answer. He opened his mouth, closed it again, as if trying to scream, but terrified of hearing what might answer back from within. In the shadows, Zeus watched. He did not advance. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He stood still, like a cold venom that knew tonight would not kill, but would rearrange what tyranny had swallowed, until it came back out in the shape of rage, of names, of bodies, of breaths too sacred to remain imprisoned in darkness. Cronus slammed the table. It cracked beneath his hand. "One of you," he bellowed, "has betrayed me. Someone poisoned my blood. Who, which one of you, brought them back to me?" But no one answered. The walls began to recoil. The curtains clung to the stone as if afraid to be accomplices in this unfolding crime. And in the great hall there was only a king,
beginning to hear his own voice echo from inside, and an ancient whisper. You swallowed your children. Now it's time to vomit. Suddenly the body jolted. Cronus lurched forward, his hand crushing the edge of the table until it shattered beneath his grip. Then he coughed, not a cough, but a heaving. From his mouth spilled a pale, sticky thread, writhing like it searched for a name in the dark. Something moved in his throat. It wasn't food. It wasn't air. It was an old promise returning. The chapter ends, but the tyrant's mouth does not.
Chapter 10. From the Epic, the Uprising, from the cave to the edge of war. The sacred vomit, when tyranny spat out its children. This wasn't a birth, it was an exorcism, as if hell had parted its thighs and spat out what it devoured, curses with names. The vomit wasn't red, it oozed black and thick, like history forced out of a gut that once called itself power. Cronus roared, but this time the roar didn't shake the palace walls. It terrified his own voice. He lay sprawled on his throne, trembling, every bone echoing the memory of that drop with no taste, yet it knew exactly what to call forth. And then, a gasp. His mouth split open, wide as time unraveling backward, and out of it came Hestia, not crying, not screaming, but walking, soaked in blood and pus, like something torn from a grave never properly sealed. Her body dripped, but her eyes burned with the curse of a mother who was never allowed to nurse, with the fury of someone who saw fire before ever striking the match. She whispered, broken and sharp, "Where were you, life, when I was left to rot in the dark?" Then she spat, as if the womb of time itself was purging the lie. Next came Demeter, not so much born, but kicked her way out of the king's insides. Her breast sagged, dripping sour milk, her hair clumped with screams, her face a storm of grief. She shrieked into Cronus's face, "I was a mother without a child, a body stripped of time. And you weren't a father, you were a tomb, too arrogant to know it was never a god." The hall exploded with breathless rage. And Hera emerged. She didn't crawl, she didn't falter, she walked like a judge, one born of wrath, carrying a sentence already sealed. She looked at Zeus, sharp-eyed and merciless, and said, "You too, born to rule? Damn all of you! One swallows us, the other crowns us, and expects we forget?" She spat at his feet, and that spit weighed more than all the tales of brotherhood combined. In the corner, the throne trembled. Cronus convulsed, sweat poured from his skin. The vomiting wasn't done. Then came Hades, not stepping out, but seeping like smoke from a pyre. His face veiled in soot, as if hell itself had kissed him before sending him back. He didn't speak at first. He only stared at the king. Then turned to Zeus, voice rasping like death. "Whom do you belong to now? Are we to fight for you, or bury the king again? Tell me, do we set it on fire, or drown it in his heart?" Still, the purge continued. Cronus's chest jolted. A guttural crack tore through the hall, and out came Poseidon, half drenched in brackish water, the other half a wave violated. Time vomited him like the sea rejecting a sunken ship. He stood. He didn't speak. He looked at his hand, smeared his face with the foul liquid, then whispered, "To be swallowed, that is a curse. But to emerge, without drowning them in return, that is betrayal." They were all out now, not as children, but as bombs. No hugs, no questions, no joy. Each stood like a lone flame, refusing to recognize the others. And yet, they shared one truth.
They had all been digested. They had all passed through the throat of power, and they weren't here to begin life, but to finish what was left of it. Zeus stood before them, not smiling, not reaching out, but watching them like chess pieces forged in fire. And he said quietly, as if the wind itself strained to hear, "Welcome back. This is not a return. This is a second birth, and this time, we do not leave hell without dragging it with us." Behind them, Cronus still writhed, coughing blood, choking pus, desperately searching for his name, but the voices no longer called him father, they called him butcher. Time within him reversed. His blood froze, and his voice whimpered like a man who slaughtered his children, only to realize they were still breathing inside his mouth. End of chapter. But inside Cronus, there were still names yet to come.
Chapter 11. From the Epic, the Uprising, from the Cave to the Edge of War. The One-Eyed Thunder, from the Rise, from the Cave to the Edge of War, when the gods shattered. Before the Unbroken One, after the palace vomited out what it had devoured for centuries, silence did not fall, it stood tall, like an axe held high above every neck. No throne bore a name, no stone stayed firm beneath a ruler's feet. The hall that once breathed tyranny now choked on ancient fear, and a voice they had never heard before. Zeus. He stood among them, not as a brother, not as a foe, but as something that had not been born of their womb, nor expelled with them from Cronos's gut. Something that resembled regret, yet never once begged for forgiveness. Hades spoke first, his voice like a tomb left open too long. "Who are you? From what crack did you crawl? You fought our sister. Have you come to finish what the tyrant began?" Zeus replied without raising his eyes. "I am Zeus, the one who was never swallowed." Poseidon let out a bitter laugh, then growled, "Never swallowed? Then you have no voice here. We were the ones crushed in his gut. We were suffocated by Cronos's breath.
And you crawled from nothing and claimed dominion over us?" Zeus didn't respond. He didn't flinch, but the air around him folded in, as if the room itself understood what was left unspoken. Hera spoke next, her voice cracked with milk that had never been drawn. "Blood isn't enough to make you one of us. You were never imprisoned, never defiled, never broken. What face do you wear to lead us? A face without scars doesn't get followed." And then the earth replied. The doors of the hall swung open. Rhea entered, hair undone by urgency, chest rising like she had chased death itself. And in her eyes, time ran, weeping. She stood at the center, not before them, but before herself. She looked at her children, 5 faces, all of her flesh, but not one truly knew the other. She spoke, her voice like a prayer to forgotten gods. "I bore you to be a mother, and became a witness to your burial. I buried you in a womb that would not stop feeding, and I stayed silent, not because I betrayed you, but because I didn't know how to save one of you without dying." Hestia lowered her gaze. Demeter cried, soundless. Only Hades closed his eyes, as if what he heard was worse than hell itself. But Hera stepped forward. "Your silence killed us. You were the face of life. How did we believe death?" Rhea didn't defend. She stood bare. "Because I was weaker than tyranny, and stronger than submission. Because I was a mother, and every mother fears losing what's left." Then she pointed to Zeus. "This one wasn't swallowed because he couldn't be. Tyranny does not consume what resembles it. It devours what trembles before it. But him, he never feared, he never ran, he never asked me. He is your savior, not because he is your brother, but because he is the only one in this family who never broke." She turned to Hades. "You dwell in shadows. But him, when shadows follow him, they burn." To Poseidon, "You scream at waves to obey you, but him, he stays silent, and the sky splits in terror." To Hera, "You are born of rage, but his rage does not create. It erases the cosmos and redraws it from ash." She placed her hand on Zeus's chest. "He deserves no throne because he is your kin. He deserves it because he is the only one not born of weakness, nor lust, nor vengeance, but of necessity. The need to end disgrace and begin thunder." Silence reigned, but it was not peace. Hades stood still, like a statue waiting for its tomb. Poseidon stepped back like the sea retreating from battle. Hera raised her chin, not in forgiveness, but because there was no path left. No one cheered, no one objected, nothing was granted. Zeus walked to the wall. He wrote nothing. He merely looked at it, like a mirror, then said, "If you do not wish to be led, then try carving a path without thunder." He left them, no tears, no farewells, just a single moment that ended debate and began a new age. And the chapter ended, not in applause nor in submission, but in a quiet acceptance from gods who now knew that the throne may not belong to the one who demands it, but to the one whom even time itself fears.
Chapter 12. From the Epic, the Uprising, from the cave to the edge of war. The palace's cry, when time awoke to its own vomit. He awoke, not like a king reclaiming his throne, but like a corpse rejected by the grave. Cronus opened his eyes and saw that the darkness wasn't surrounding him. It was leaking from within. His sweat poured thick like blood, and his skin burned as though a coal refused to die inside him. He hadn't been asleep. He'd vanished, forgotten even by himself. The palace walls trembled, not from earthquake, but from time itself recoiling, ashamed to pass through him again. His hands felt heavy, like nooses dragging from the neck of the world. He looked down. Beneath his feet, patches of something dark soaked the marble. Was it blood? Or something that fear itself had vomited? He reached for the bed, only to touch a coldness that hated him. The sheets were drenched with something that bore no scent, but whispered one name: betrayal. "Who?" At first, the word came out like a breath, then it became a growl, then the growl became a quake that rattled the ribs of the entire palace. He touched his chest, warm, wet, not food. What had come out of him was soul. He rose, half naked, half mad, a thing spit back by time into a kingdom that no longer fit his shape. In the mirror across the room, he didn't see himself, he saw them. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, the children he had devoured, now staring back. And suddenly, he knew. What he had swallowed, time had now regurgitated. "No!" He roared, veins burst, mirrors cracked, the stones themselves trembled, as if guilt had finally woken inside them. Who freed them? Who dragged death out of my gut? Who shattered the eternity I carved with my own hands? He moved. Every step pounded nails into the coffin of his reign. Every breath was the cough of a corpse refusing its own burial. Then he remembered. Rhea. That face, the face that does not cry but betrays. Was it her? Did she slip thunder into my throat while I slept? Is Zeus alive? Was I the prey all along? Was the king the sacrifice? Is Uranus laughing at me from his grave?
He collapsed, fist to the ground. The floor cracked beneath him, as if even the palace could no longer bear his weight. He roared again, but this time it wasn't the voice of a man, nor a god, nor a beast. It was the voice of a dying civilization, gasping for someone, anyone, to write its obituary. Then he lifted his head, eyes raining sparks, lips stained with a bitterness no ocean could wash. His whole body poured sweat, not of effort, but of curse. I am not Uranus. I am the one who severed the sky. I am the one who strangled time until it begged to serve. If Zeus still breathes, I will carve lightning from his chest, tear the clouds with my teeth, and shove this world back into the womb of darkness. He walked through the palace. Not a single curtain dared brush his skin. The air itself recoiled as he passed. The drapes now looked like shrouds. Nothing is born without my will, and nothing dies unless it dies by my hand. But the walls, they whispered, not in voices but in cracks. Your time is over, even if you are not. Cronus didn't hear, or maybe he did, and decided, whoever whispers shall be slaughtered. He stormed from his chamber, bare-chested, but wearing a shroud of fury for armor. And in his eyes there was no madness, only logic without mercy, resolve without compromise, and a smile. The kind that never follows a joke, but a war.
Chapter 13. From the Epic, the Uprising. From the cave to the edge of war. Beneath the open sky. The alliance before the storm. The night was still moist with silence when they gathered. 6 souls walking the earth, each carrying a different shade of hell inside. In the heart of a wide, open valley beneath the raw breath of the sky, Zeus stood. His hand rested on a rock he had never touched before. His face turned upward, not to gaze at clouds, but to glare at thrones built from the skulls of suns. He spoke, I do not ask for your love. I don't want you to call me brother. I ask only this, let us not allow Cronus to chew the world again. Hestia, his first flame, sat on the ground as though planting a revolution. Demeter clutched a blade of grass, reading it like a prophecy of the coming season. Hera stood tall, chin raised, gazing at him as queens do when a throne is contested. But Hades did not move. He lingered at the edge, still as stone, as if listening to a voice only he could hear. Then he said, Who made you our leader? We didn't vote for you. Yes, you freed us, but only because your mother hid you. You were lucky. Zeus didn't respond. He knew. Some wounds cannot be argued with. And this brother, this one, carried more of the cave's darkness in his heart than any of them.
Then came the voice of Poseidon, low, calm, but as heavy as a coming storm. What is your plan? Do we go to war without an army, or wait for Cronus to vomit out something else? Zeus stepped forward. He raised his hand and pointed to the sky. The plan is this. We do not wait. We will not be echoes of ancient fear. We will not repeat a mother's silence born of terror. The sky will not be swallowed again. He turned toward the dark end of the valley, and his voice changed. But before we choose our path, there is someone you must see. She is not a prophet, not a warrior, but she is the eye that never closed when all else did. She is the one who knew you were alive, when even the earth doubted it. She crafted the poison, while fear was still pretending to be wisdom. Gaia, Mother Earth, entrusted her to me. Her name is Metis. From deep within the rocks, she emerged. She did not walk, she dragged silence behind her, like a cloak that had long stopped hiding her. Her first step made no sound, but the air shifted around her as she passed. Her dress wasn't silk. It was more like old skin peeled from a rotting era, sewn back together by her own hands to stand as witness.
She stood before them. She didn't bow. She didn't rise like a goddess. She simply met their eyes, one by one, as if searching for a spark, not applause. Then she spoke, a voice that didn't scream, but pierced like stone breaking from within. I am not one of you, but I am not against you. I was there when time swallowed you. I saw who wept for you, who stayed silent and who schemed. I am not salvation. I am a tool in the hands of one who decided that salvation would not come by itself. And if you seek a leader, there he is, standing among you, not behind. She looked at Zeus and added, he didn't save you because he was the strongest. He saved you because he dared to ask, why? And if you think time will offer you a second chance, then you've learned nothing from the grave. She fell silent, but her silence felt less like peace and more like a lightning bolt trapped in the lungs of the sky. In that moment, the earth trembled. A crack split through the mountain nearby, and from it emerged a giant, one eye glowing like a fractured moon, one hand clutching a boulder like it weighed no more than a feather. A cyclops, sent by Gaia. No words needed. The creature walked until it stood behind Zeus, then knelt. Hestia exhaled as if reigniting. Hera closed her eyes and saw a throne ablaze. Hades didn't smile, but he stepped closer. Poseidon lifted his gaze and saw the clouds begin to stir, and Zeus was the last to speak. He looked to the sky. The night had begun to retreat before the fire of a coming sun. And he said, the sky shall not belong to those who swallow it, but to those who set it free. And silence fell. But in that silence, the first step of war had been born. No blood, no blade, only a will, fiercer than lightning itself.
Finale. The Epic, the Uprising. From the cave to the edge of war. The lightning that does not forgive. From rising to war. This was no triumph, not even a resurrection. It was the uprising of a wound that refused to close. And the earth? It did not calm. It trembled, not from memory, but from the taste of a blade drawing near. For high above, in the clouds, there was a groan, no longer hidden, as if the sky itself had begun to tear from the inside. And Zeus, he wasn't a prophet preaching mercy, nor a ghost whispering peace. He was lightning. Lightning imprisoned in a cave for too long until its silence became a shape and a taste. And when he rose, he did not rise to illuminate. He rose to burn. He stood upon the cliff. His eyes no longer sought support. His heart no longer craved warmth. One step away from tyranny. But between him and glory, a chasm stared back, ravenous. He was no longer the child hidden beneath stone, nor the youth searching for his name. He was the name. He was the stone. Around him, brothers returned from the dark, but without reclaiming the light. And a mother? She chose survival over a scream, chose to save herself, even if it meant burying him. But he didn't look back, because the war to come is not won by motherhood. It's lit by holy rage, not blood, but fury. That night, as the mountains sank into its own shadow, Zeus stood alone. He did not move, did not speak. He only stared deep into the heart of the sky,
as if warning it to never be the same again. He reached toward it, not like a beggar, but like one claiming what had been written for him, in flame. The wind quivered, the clouds split, and thunder for the first time did not come from the heavens. It came from his mouth. He said, "The sky shall not belong to the one who swallows, but to the one who frees." And then, silence. Not because the night had ended, but because silence itself realized it had nothing more to say. In the distance, there were sounds, heavy, groping through the dark, bodies breathing like ancient rot clawing from its tomb. The Titans were not planning. They were sniffing his name. As if the air had betrayed them, as if breath itself had become treason. Creus, whose breath could choke mountains, was there. He did not sleep. He did not miss. He simply counted the breaths of the free, so he could bury them.
And Hyperion, light not born for the sun, but for vengeance, sat upon an ember that refused to die. His eyes, they guarded nothing. They waited for someone to rise, so he could be slaughtered in the light. Even Gaia, deep within her unmerciful core, smiled, as if she knew. When children are born from rage, they are no longer children. They are curses that do not extinguish. And there, in the gut of the earth, the whispers multiplied, warnings, prophecies. No one will survive. All return to her, the earth. But only one will rise from her. Only one will bear the sky on his shoulders, not as inheritance, but as punishment. And so, the story does not end. It begins, not as a tale to be told, but as a sin to be burned away in blood. The Titan War knows no wisdom. It does not listen to sermons. It breaks names, rapes kingdoms, and flogs time itself until it confesses. This is no ordinary war. This is the ending that came too late. So prepare, for lightning is not born to light the way, but to obliterate it. This chapter of the epic has come to an end, but remember, what you've just heard is not a record of facts, but the echo of a myth, a story born from the imagination of the ancients, etched into the long memory of humankind. If this tale stirred something in you, if it opened a door to reflection or wonder, don't forget to support the channel and share the journey with those you love. And in the comments, tell us which moment in this chapter struck you the most and why. We'll meet again in the next chapter of this audio odyssey through time. Until then, farewell.